Winter Roses, Summer by fairytalelovr. Chapter 9, A Double Standard. Sansa had come not long after Ned had stalked down the corridor and said she would sit with Daenerys if Jon wanted to rest. He accepted the offer, needing to get out of the stifling room, as Catelyn's words and Ned's slipped detail about his mother were overwhelming his troubled mind. So he found his way to the training yard, picked up a sword lying around, and started taking his frustration out on a fencing dummy. For a long time, no one dared approach, actually giving him a wide berth, aware of his clear anger and Ghost's protective stance. The gossip from the night before was certainly spread already. "I wonder what that poor concoction of straw and wood ever did to earn such a treatment," a voice cut through Jon's anger. He turned, surprised anyone had interrupted, and even more that he had dared come closer, despite the direwolf. "You're Tyrion Lannister," he said with a frown. "The Queen's brother." "My greatest accomplishment," Tyrion acknowledged sarcastically. "Yours is... well, you're Ned Stark's bastard, aren't you? And Daenerys Targaryen's husband." Jon clenched his jaw with renewed anger and turned away. "Did I offend you?" Tyrion asked. "Sorry." "You are the bastard, though." "Lord Eddard Stark is my father," Jon conceded, "and Lady Stark is not your mother." "Making you a bastard," Tyrion said, as if explaining mathematics to a small child. "Let me give you some advice, bastard. Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor. Then it can never be used to hurt you." "What the hell do you know about being a bastard?" "All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes," Tyrion stated matter-of-factly, as Jon picked up the sword to resume his attack on the dummy. "If you want to be more than what people call you, put that sword to better use. Hacking against a training dummy will not make people know you as anything other than the angry little boy who is Ned Stark's bastard and Daenerys Targaryen's husband." "What if I wanted to put it to good use against your nephew?" "I would say few people other than my sister, Robert, and my father would judge you, though their judgment is the one that counts. And while I don't want my nephew killed, I don't criticize you for your highly justified rage. I am sorry about the child." He finally left, and Jon turned back to the dummy, attacking it with renewed ferocity. Joffrey was getting away with his atrocity because he was the king's son. What would an apology matter? A great ceremony later that afternoon for the prince to pretend in front of the others. Then, that's what. A play for a captive audience. His shame wouldn't heal Daenerys. The little prince's wounded ego wouldn't save their child. Not much later, heavy rain began to fall, cold and nearly frozen. If it continued getting colder, they'd have a last snowstorm to close the time of the summer snows. The curtain of falling water successfully cleared the courtyard, but Jon didn't move. Pent-up anger and energy coursing through him, not to mention concern over the child he didn't know whether or not still grew inside his wife. He was soaked to the skin when he felt a hand on his sword arm, making him drop the weapon as the woman wrapped a cloak around him. "Is Daenerys?" he asked, terror seizing him. Isla was very cross.
"She is fine, and so is your babe," she said, towing him away with surprising strength. "Though your sisters are trying to invent an excuse as to why you're not there. And won't be so soon, since you need a proper soak in hot water and dry clothes."
"I need to..."
"You need to shut up and do as I tell you before you get yourself sick."
"And I thought I was the lord, and you were the servant." Isla threw him a dirty look.
"You can go back to being a lord when you start behaving like one," she snapped, pushing him into Daenerys's unused bedchambers. A couple of maids were finished filling up the bathtub with hot water, filling the room with steam and properly vanishing. "Take your underclothes off and get in there. I'll get you some tea."
"I just need dry clothes," Jon mumbled, blushing.
Isla rolled her eyes. Get into that tub, my lord, or I swear to the mother I will throw you in there myself.
John saw that she was in no mood to be trifled with and complied quickly. The hot water felt heavenly against the chill in his bones, and he lay back, closing his eyes to enjoy the heat. His weariness was taking over, so much so that he jumped up, startled, when Isla rested a hand on his shoulder, handing him a mug. "What is this?" John asked, feeling further soothed by the smell.
Chamomile. It isn't meant for cold, no, but I find it calming. You need warmth, not medicine. Plus, it's better than yarrow tea.
Being all too familiar with that one, John agreed wholeheartedly. Isla sat by the tub and started washing his hair. John would have felt awkward and all around improper if it didn't feel so nice, like a mother tending a son she loved. The housekeeper started humming a tune, and he frowned. "Where did you learn that song? I thought you weren't northern."
She asked distractedly. "Oh, my lady taught me. She used to sing it to the babe before he was born."
"Oh? Who was she?"
Isla smiled. "The kindest soul I've ever met," was all she offered. "You are very silly, you know," she said kindly, changing the topic.
John sighed. "I guess I needed to do something I'm good at. Something I worked on and earned myself rather than what was handed to me."
"What brought this on?" John's face closed as he considered his next words.
But then the story of Catelyn's visit earlier stumbled out of his mouth before he could contain it. "Ow!" he yelled. Isla had gotten so upset her hands had curled, pulling on his hair.
"Sorry," she mumbled, releasing his curls. "Catelyn Tully will burn in the deepest circles of the hells. Her beloved gods won't absolve her of her sins."
"Why do you always call her that? Catelyn Tully?" John explained when Isla looked confused. "You'll say Lady Stark in front of the others, but otherwise you just call her Lady Catelyn or Catelyn Tully. Never Catelyn Stark."
"House Stark doesn't deserve to be darkened by the likes of her," Isla said, standing up. "Water isn't hot any more, my lord. There's fresh clothes on the bed. I'll be with the lady."
With that, she turned on her heels and left the room. Too tired to think on her behaviour, John reached for a towel and climbed out of the tub. Robb knocked on the door to Jon and Daenerys' chambers, his head pounding with pain. He couldn't reconcile what his mother had just told him. "Jon?" he called once the housekeeper had allowed him in, and he'd be reassured of Daenerys' well-being. "May I have a word?" Jon frowned, but nodded. Robb could see he was reluctant to leave his wife, but apparently he saw his brother's stormy expression. "What is it?" Jon asked as soon as they were in Robb's room. "Why did you ask Father to send my mother back to Riverrun?" "What?" Jon exclaimed, truly shocked. "She said you threw her out of your room, and then Father had, at your urging, told her to pack up and leave." Jon was absolutely flabbergasted. "Of course I didn't! As if what I say would sway Father to a decision like this." Robb blushed, but nodded as if conceding the point. "I did banish her from my room, and I told her she'd never be in Daenerys' presence again, nor to speak to her. But I never said anything to Father about telling her to go. I swear." "I know," Robb said with a sigh. "I know you couldn't convince Father. It's just... he's sending her away, Jon. What did she say to you to make him do that?" Jon hesitated. He had never told his brother about his mother's cruelty. "She was unkind to Daenerys and our child." But Robb didn't buy the lie this time. "Only to them? Don't play me for a fool, brother. I noticed that Father has been giving her the cold treatment for a few moons now. Ever since the night he suddenly dismissed several servants and had you moved to the new room. Why? What did she do that day?" "I'll talk to Father," Jon said, skirting the question. "Just because I won't allow her anywhere near Daenerys doesn't mean she should be sent away. I told them I was leaving as soon as Dany was feeling better." Before Robb could react, Jon left the room, walking purposefully to Ned's study. "Father,
May I have a word? John? What is it? Is Daenerys? She is well. Sansa and Arya with her. Father, Robb just came to tell me. Is it true? Did you send Lady Stark to Riverrun?
Ned sighed, relaxing on his chair, though anger overtook him.
Yes, I did. Father, please don't do this. Not for me. I would never ask you to do this. I know, son. I am not doing this because of you. I am doing this because of Catelyn's actions. I could... He exhaled. To some point, I can understand her petty treatment of you while you grow up, though I could never forgive her for it. I believed we could reconcile, but this is going too far. What she confessed in that corridor. I can't even look at her. I can't trust her, and I certainly can't trust her raising my children. Father, please, don't take my siblings as mother from them. You have no idea what it's like to grow up without a mother. Theirs is. She is here, Father. Please, Rickon is only 4.
Ned smiled, sadly.
I can't, son. I'm sorry if this brings you bad memories, but I can't have Catelyn here anymore.
Jon sighed, upset but resigned. He was at the door when Ned called to him.
She would be proud of you, Jon,
the man said quietly. Will you ever tell me about her? Jon asked, just as quiet.
One day, son,
Ned vowed to himself.
One day, I promise I will.
Ned was angry. Very angry. After Jon had left, Sansa had burst into his study, crying and yelling, inconsolable that her mummy was being sent away, begging Ned to reconsider. It was only when she said that Catelyn was very distressed, even blaming Jon for her return to Riverrun, which of course Sansa knew was a misunderstanding, because she knew her brother and she doubted he'd be capable of that, that Ned finally understood the intent behind his wife's pleas to their children. Catelyn wanted them to come and plead her case to Ned, and if it worked, she'd remain in Winterfell. If it didn't, at least she'd have soured the relationship between the siblings. Honestly, did she really think that would work? He knocked on the door to Catelyn's room, not actually waiting to be granted entrance. She jumped up, startled, letting go of a wooden box she carried. "Ned!" she exclaimed. "I wasn't—"
Stop putting our children against Jon, Catelyn.
"I don't—"
Don't insult my intelligence, Catelyn. Sansa came into my study just now, crying. I think it is very low how you are pitting sister against brother.
"Half-brother!" Catelyn yelled back. "How can you not see, Ned? That boy will come back in a few years and take everything that belongs to our children." Ned laughed loudly.
You cannot be talking seriously.
"He is a bastard. Power-hungry. No love for their family. That is his nature." Ned blinked, taking in the image of the woman before him.
Who was she? Is this some tale they tell in the South to caution lords from fathering bastards?
He asked, genuinely curious. "It is what the histories tell us. The Blackfyres—"
Catelyn, the Blackfyres were one family quarrelling because they were mistreated by their true-born families.
"It is the nature of a bastard. That boy is a bastard. Therefore—"
He is a person! My son! He is my son! Did you ever look at him and see a person rather than a monster your scepter told you to fear? Catelyn, did you ever think that Jon will be Robb's bannerman one day? That fostering a good, strong relationship between them as true brothers would shield Robb from backstabbing? That a man might be kind and not turn against a brother he loved. But he wouldn't think the same about a brother who scorned him all his life?
Catelyn was visibly shocked. I mean,
He will rise against Winterfell, Ned. It is just...
By the old gods, woman, you sound like one of those there saucy parrots. Jon will never rise against Winterfell. Not while House Stark holds it. Jon would never betray his siblings.
He wants to be Lord of Winterfell!
You dread that, Catelyn. It is different. Stop this nonsense at once.
But the gods teach us that the sinful nature of...
Enough of this!
Ned exclaimed. She staggered back, almost tripping on the box she'd let fall. He held her up, noticing the detail on the lid. The well-carved direwolf head.
Where did you get this?
Oh, I had it made years ago.
No, you didn't,
Ned said quietly, reaching for the box. Ned, this is private! Catelyn tried to fight him and take the box back.
It can't be,
he whispered, though the wood was worn after over 2 decades. It was as still as he remembered.
I thought this had been seized with the rest of his things,
Ned said, looking at Benjen's elegant calligraphy engraved at the underside of the lid.
Lord Brandon of House Stark. I suppose he left this in Riverrun. Why did you never give it to me?
I had even forgotten about that, Catelyn replied, too quickly.
No, you had not. You were going to take this with you, and you lied when I asked. You have been living in Winterfell for 15 years. It was enough time to...
He froze, seeing a small scroll among the contents of the box. The seal had been broken, but it was blue wax with the drawing of a flower. No, of a rose. It was Lyanna's personal seal, the one he had found among her things in the Tower of Joy. He unrolled it quickly, his hands shaking. My dear brother, I send this to ease your heart, so that you may kneel before the gods to take your wife, assured that I am well. I know you and father won't agree, and that Ned will judge me for my impulsiveness, but I have chosen to follow my heart. A raven is too short a message, but, please, know that I am well, and I am safe, and Prince Rhaegar cares for me. We shall return once things are taken care of. With love, your sister, Lyanna of House Stark. Ned felt the bout of anxiousness. His old friend, threatening to swallow him whole again. He forced himself to take deep breaths until he could no longer hear his heart beating in his ears.
Were you the woman to break the seal?
He asked Catelyn brusquely. No, she said, swallowing dry. It was broken when I found it. Brandon was... He'd been arrested already, when we went to collect his things. He read it. The maester said he read it and demanded his horse be saddled. Once I read it, I understood why he left Riverrun in such a rush on the day of our wedding. Ned clenched his hands into fists.
You should have shown me this years ago, Catelyn.
Why should I?
He was my brother.
He was my betrothed, who left me at the altar to go fight for a sister who decided to dishonour herself.
You do not get to talk about my sister,
he roared loudly, fury welling, making Catelyn take 3 steps back.
No one gets to say a word against my sister in front of me. How could you, Catelyn? You knew how much I blamed myself for what happened. How could you not tell me this?
Maybe I thought you deserved it, she yelled back, trembling, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Maybe having you feel some measure of guilt was my way of punishing you. Because the gods know you never felt guilty for bringing that boy here. Not when you were so proud of that bastard! Ned exploded, slapping her. Catelyn fell on the bed, clutching her burning cheek, her tears rushing down.
Not once, Ned said lowly. In 17 years of marriage, not once have I raised a hand against you. Not when you defied me. Not when you shunned me. Not when I discovered the way you abused and mistreated my son. Not even when I heard your abhorrent confession to how you prayed against his life, his marriage, and his children. But no more. Speak ill of my son or my sister again, and I will show you how your beloved self treats misbehaving wives. I assure you, your gods are much more vicious than I.
Catelyn couldn't do anything other than cry, frozen in her place on the bed, as Ned rolled up the scroll, set it back on the box, and closed the lid.
You leave at first light, he stated gravely. Do not test me. Our marriage is over. And now I can safely say there is no hope of having it back. And Septa Mordane is going with you. If your gods and septons and scepters teach that bastards are wicked creatures rather than people, they have no place in my home.
Catelyn succumbed to her tears, sobs wracking her body as she fell to her side on the bed. Ned quickly made his way back to his study, barring the door behind himself, before also succumbing to the 17 years' worth of regret and resentment. Jon was standing at the front of the Great Hall next to Robb and Theon, trying not to explode in anger as he watched Joffrey stand next to his mother on the dais. The king had summoned the court, saying attendance was mandatory for all nobles in Winterfell region, as well as their sons and heirs. No one knew for certain what had exactly happened, but given Jon and Daenerys' absence from the last night's feast, the late arrival of the king, the prince, the Lannisters, Lord and Lady Stark, and Robb, as well as Jon's behaviour in the courtyard, it was very clear the matter was related to House Starling. Daenerys' absence now was not helping matters. Finally, at least half an hour after the appointed time, Robert entered the hall with Ned. Everyone bowed and curtsied until the king had sat on a large chair that was standing for a throne.
Very well, let's get this over with, Robb said. There was an unfortunate incident last night, he announced to the curious court, involving Lady Starling. Lord Starling is here and will accept the sincere apology from Prince Joffrey.
The people looked from the prince to Jon, who had set his face in a blank mask. I apologise, Lord Starling, Joffrey said, though his tone and body betrayed he felt nothing but. I had an unfortunate error in judgment and overstepped. My sincerest apologies.
And, Robert prompted, making the rising whispers quiet again, your foolishness had dire circumstances of House Starling, boy. Apologise better.
Joffrey clenched his jaw, eyes burning with anger and shame. I apologise, Lord Starling, that my actions led Lady Starling to miscarry your weak child. The crowd gasped, whispers growing again. Jon kept his face expressionless, even though his blood was burning up like the molten lava of a volcano his castle stood upon. If Prince Joffrey's punishment is complete, Your Grace, may I please have your leave? Lady Starling's fever hasn't broken since last night, he added, only to needle Joffrey. Robert nodded, a bit shocked, and Jon rushed away from the room. The noblemen and women were outraged at what was said, and what went unsaid. Are we to understand, Your Grace, Lord Glover said, that Prince Joffrey assaulted Lady Starling, leading to a miscarriage, and his punishment was an apology? An outrage it is, said another lord. The assault wasn't concretized, the king said, and Lord Starling understood that. That his wife's honour was stained and his child and heir murdered, and all he got was an apology from the king he's sworn fealty to. Great John Umber explained. I happen to remember your own reaction when it was your lady love who was assaulted, Your Grace. And yet your son commits the same crime you condemned Rhaegar Targaryen for, and he gets off with a slap on the wrist. If a woman had attempted something similar, Lady Mormont added, she'd be put to death. Never mind an apology. The Northern Lords were incensed, complaining loudly, even when Ned tried to intervene. Robb hid his amusement, knowing he couldn't show his mirth at the dishonour of the royal family. but even the Southerners who had come with the king were affronted. A few, most likely Lannister sympathisers, were very subdued, saying the prince had committed a mistake, but not much more. Others were nearly as angry as the Northerners.
"And to violate the sanctuary of his host!" the great John exclaimed. "There is no greater dishonour than to break with guest right!"
Tyrion stood from his chair and stopped by his sister's ear on the way. "Do you still think we don't need a strong Northern alliance?" he asked. "Not even Ned Stark can rein them in. And their allegiance is completely to House Stark. What do you think are Joffrey's chances once he sits on the Iron Throne and Robb Stark is Warden of the North? Because Ned Stark is loyal to Robert, but the same won't hold to Joffrey, and certainly his son won't be as loyal as the father." Cersei looked at the commotion beneath them and didn't reply. Jon was standing next to the king as he shot down ducks at the lake in the Wolfswood early the next morning, though he had no idea how Robert was awake and shooting so early. Well, attempting to shoot down ducks. Robert's aim was worse than Bran's, but the latter was 9. The man was just lazy. Jon found that the Demon of the Trident was more a distant memory, because Robert Baratheon was just a disappointment.
"So, there was no hope?" the man asked.
Robert had started to regret his handling of the situation ever since the explosive reaction from the lords and ladies the day before. Of course, a part of him wanted to punish them somehow for their lack of respect towards their king, but then what the Loud One had said had hit the target.
"Your son commits the same crime you condemned Rhaegar Targaryen for, and he gets off with a slap on the wrist?"
"The Maester says it's too early to tell, Your Grace," Jon replied politely, holding back the cringe as the crossbow shot a bolt about 20 yards off the mark.
"Lady Starling is confined to her bedchambers for the moon at the least." "Blasted boy!"
Robert exclaimed, shooting down another bolt wildly off the mark.
"His mother spoils him too much. Come on, say it, he's a right bitch."
"It is not for me to judge how the Queen raises the prince, Your Grace," Jon said through clenched teeth, and only because Daenerys, Robb and Isla had practiced with him half into the evening before.
"Though, I must say, I am offended at how my lady wife was treated, and in my father's home, begging your forgiveness." "I'd think you had no balls and no blood in your veins if you weren't offended, boy,"
Robert said, finally lowering the crossbow with a curse.
"Blasted thing, my eyes aren't the same anymore. How good is your aim, boy?"
"I usually prefer a bow, Your Grace, but I'd say good enough."
Robert laughed. "You are truly your father's son, all closed up like a fucking clam. Tell you what, I know nothing I offer will bring back the child. Or, if the gods are kind, make it less dangerous for the girl. But this is all I can do, so the crown, in recognition of the mistake Prince Joffrey made, will raise House Starling to a major house. You'll answer to the Warden of the North directly, not some other vassal house. You honour me, my king," Jon said, going to his knees. "But I'm afraid I must refuse you. My Lord Father worked hard to make it the deal, so as not to offend House Manderley." "Oh, fuck that," Robert said, waving his hand dismissively. "I'll tell my hand to tell Lord Manderley that this is the order by the king."
Then he laughed.
"Well, your father will just have to redo his deal."
"I wouldn't wish to offend my Lord Father by—"
"Enough of that. I'll talk to Ned. I've decided. Now, take out your bow, boy. You get me 3 ducks, and I'll send 1,000 men to your army."
Jon bit back a smile.
"Are you sure, Your Grace?" "Come on, boy. Show me what your father teaches you in the training grounds."
End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh boy, eventful. Catelyn keeping that from Ned all these years just because she's angry about Jon? I'm not normally one to call a woman a bitch, but ouch. And Joffrey being a little shit, but then again, who's surprised? And one thing here I find ironic and kind of sad. Jon is the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, and Robert was obsessively in love with Lyanna. So in one way, Jon could have been the son that Robb wanted, and he's pretty much everything Robert would have wanted in a son. But instead, he's the son of the man Robert hated most. That is sad, funny, and ironic all at the same time. I pity Robert, but I don't think he genuinely loved Lyanna. He idolised her, I think. Put her on a pedestal. Just like the statue on her tomb, I think. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.